Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast, everyone. My name is Eli,
I'm Jesse.
and we are here with the 2025 season preview. Tyler is with us in spirit. We have collected his predictions for the year, his thoughts going into the season, and I have them sitting on my phone next to me, just waiting to be read. It's all very exciting stuff, Jess. How are you feeling, particularly about the episode? We're going to talk about the season later.
Uh, Feeling pretty good. I mean, I will say I feel like it's been a somewhat frustrating off season. I have not been thrilled. I'm excited for the fact that baseball is back and the Orioles are back. We'll get into my specific feelings about the upcoming year, but I'm definitely excited to start the season, and I'm excited baseball is here. So,
Okay.
yeah. How about you?
I feel pretty good. I'm yeah, I have way too much to do tonight. I'm actually doing kind of a fun thing. I'm gonna go see Paul Skeens and Sandy Alcantara for opening day in Miami tomorrow. Which I'm pretty excited about. Uh but yeah, I'm just not ready to like take a day off of work. I'm gonna finish this episode. I'm gonna go work until like midnight. I am going to be stressed. I'm gonna be doing all sorts of stuff. Um, but that's all right. Jesse is yelling at me in the chat, folks. See, and now he's mad I'm saying this, but he's yelling at me in the
I
chat to get the
am.
ad read done with. I wanted to give you guys a nice little heartwarming open to this episode. Do you want to do the honors with the ad, Jess, since
I
you're so
don't.
pressed for it?
I don't.
All right.
I just didn't want you to forget.
I'm
That's
not
all that was
forgetting it.
happening, and
No,
I
I'm a
just wanted to make
professional, Jess.
sure. So,
I'm
yeah,
professional. I do a whole lead in. It's a nice
I
segue
see.
into the ad.
I
But
always, yeah, I mean, I think the viewers know I like to just get it out of the way and then move on to the episode. But I hear
right,
what
right.
you're saying. Yeah.
Well, let's get into it. Thank the sponsor of this show. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for betting on all the madness. Even if your bracket's busted, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with a free Sweet 16 bracket and live betting on every remaining tournament game. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to MLB, NHL, and MMA, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Is that sufficient, Jesse? Are you okay to just talk loosely again?
I'm good.
You feel good? Okay.
Hmm.
Well, yeah. I mean, opening day is tomorrow. You know, we it's going to be one heck of an episode. I think we got a good amount to cover. Um, but I guess just to start things off, very, very simply, you said you were a little frustrated with this off season. What are your vibes heading into 2025? Where are you sitting right now?
Not great. The Orioles, if we're thinking about this past off season in relationship to the one prior, the Orioles, even though it was really only one significant move in getting Corbin Burns, the Orioles were more active last off season than this one. And I mean, we've made a few additions here and there. Some of them will be interesting. Um, but overall, especially with thinking about and focusing on the rotation, uh, it doesn't feel good to sort of have, I guess, a GM that sort of operates in the way that Mike Elias operates at times, just because there is no urgency. He feels very confident in this team being a playoff team. Uh, so he doesn't act with urgency to win a World Series, or he at least so far has not demonstrated that with the Orioles organization. Demonstrated urgency to winning a World Series, or acted with that sort of urgency in mind. I mean, you look at this year's starting rotation heading into opening day. I think there's a lot sort of to be desired with it. Yeah, it's sort of a frustrating. everybody sort of acknowledges it's not like Mike Elias is making a different assessment than the rest of the fans are. It's just sort of he thinks that we could get away with it. We're fine and we'll figure it out later. And as a fan, that's not really a fun uh even if I can potentially acknowledge there is logic and reasoning behind it, even though some of the reasoning we know is about money, and that I'm a lot less sympathetic to than other reasons, like trying to keep the window open for a longer period of time, not trading prospects, etc. Um, it is frustrating from a fan's perspective to see so so much working around the edges, so many Kyle Gibson and Charlie Morton signings, that it's frustrating as a fan, especially in the context of you turn the corner, you look at the AL East. Oh, the Red Sox got Alex Bregman. Oh, the Yankees got Max Fried, et cetera, et cetera. You know, so that's where it's sort of like I want some cool players. You know, I want to be excited, and Michael Eyes doesn't bring that, with the notable exception of Corbin Burns. Maybe there's some reasoning to be excited about Tyler O'Neill. I mean, you know, we've talked about him a bit even so far on this podcast. Um, but he's not, you know, he's a tier below even some of the other players that I'm sort of imagining as who the Orioles could have acquired.
Yeah, in inside me there are two wolves, right? And one of the wolves agrees with you, and the other one says this offseason was the most active that the Orioles have had in so long. We signed um five free agents and like major league free agents in O'Neill, Gibson, Morton, Sagano, Gary Sanchez. Um, I don't even remember the last time that happened. Granted, those were 4 1-year deals and a 3 year with a we opt out after one, so
Right.
I understand. But the Orioles went and signed five different guys. Their payroll is expected to rise over $50 million this year, which would be the largest year-over-year increase as a percentage of last year's. It's like almost a 50% increase from our payroll last year. Um, so this feels, like although there was no Bregman, Max Fried, there was no trade for Garrett Crochet, there was none of that. I agree. Like a lot was happening, and it was a lot of small stuff that kind of, it piles up and it feels like it might be kind of a nothing burger. But like maybe we'll talk about this a little more later, but for me, like I'm really a believer in Tyler O'Neill. I think that was one of the smartest signings of the entire offseason. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays got suckered into $90 million for Santander, who was a less productive offensive player than O'Neill was last year, plain and simple, by measure of WRC plus, OPS, everything. Um, so I think a, there's logic to it. And if you look at the pitching staff in particular, which is everyone's gripe, you know, Corbin Burns said that we were aggressive early, I think was his phrase. We were attempting to make moves, and it seems like we just couldn't really find common ground. It never really worked out with these dudes. And the end result was that we fell back on building out a ton of depth. And the depth is like I don't know. At this point in time, I'm almost like, what are we gonna do with all of this depth? Like if Grayson comes back in a couple months, like Kyle Gibson's theoretically going through a spring training program ramp up right now. Um, and you're just gonna end up with like 13 viable starting pitchers. Uh, I like counted that number out a little while ago, and that goes down to like even Chase McDermott, Trevor Rogers, and all this. But um, there's so much depth, and we've got like eight number five starters on this team, if not more, and then a couple fringe swingmen at the back end, So it's not really inspiring, but I do think there's a world where we're gonna look back and we're gonna say, you know what, this got us through the first half of the season, and then Kyle Bradish popped up in the second half, coming off of Tommy John, and then we made a trade at the deadline and did something, and I think that the acquired depth to secure your place through the first part of the season, even if it's not the most exciting way to do it, I think it makes sense. Um, but that said, yeah, I also like the vibes for me are high, but at the same time, they could have been sky high. They could have been, man, we're winning the World Series, like it could have been that, and it's not. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I mean, I hear everything you're saying. I think the inspiring point you made is sort of where I'm approaching this from. Even though you're right about the various moves the Orioles did make, I mean, two of them, like we said, Morton, Gibson, are veteran pitchers. Sugano is although he'll be kind of interesting and fun to watch because he's coming from a new league, and we haven't seen him in the majors. So that'll be fun and interesting. Although he is a veteran as well, he's a pretty old guy for a starting pitcher.
35.
I thought it was six, but okay, 35. And then, we're also Gary Sanchez is the other one who is a backup catcher. Now, granted, he might get more playing time than the average backup catcher in Major League Baseball. But and he did used to be a starter. But at the end of the day, we are talking about two fringe number five starting pitchers, a backup catcher, somebody who will, go in the outfield for us, and O'Neill, Laureano, and then,
That's right. I didn't even mention
yeah,
Laureano. He's a sixth.
yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I agree. I did look it up. Tomoyuki Sugano will turn 36 in October, so still 35 for now. Um, but yeah, I hear everything you're saying. I guess taking this hodgepodge of old men into a playoff run, what are you looking at as keys to success for this year? What are you looking at for how this team becomes, the final version of itself, I guess.
Well, ultimately, I mean, I think that the Orioles, I mean, definitely, we got to think about the starting pitching. That's the first part. I mean, it's just the glaring problem on this team.
You're not pleased with Charlie Morton as your number two starting pitcher.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not at all.
Up there throwing
So
75% curveballs.
Right, exactly. And that's sort of the situation we have right now. So, no, I mean the starting rotation, I think you could argue is despite its depth, more or less a mess. I mean, the fact that Charlie Morton is a number two is really sort of inexcusable for a Major League Baseball team at this point in Charlie Morton's career. I will caveat.
Charlie Morton 5 years ago would have been okay. Charlie
Yeah,
Morton
right.
now.
We could accept that, right.
Houston Astros,
Um,
Charlie Morton, chucking
right,
98.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, you look at the starting pitching, and I mean, there are a lot of things that are sort of toss-ups. I mean, what the Orioles are sort of, I mean, they'll reassess at the deadline and they will know that there are certain things that are variables they can't really expect. But as far as like guys returning and stuff and what their effectiveness is going to be like, which is what the Orioles are really reliant on, is and then the depth to get them to that point. Um, I mean, it's a big gamble to sort of leave to figure out, down the final stretch of the season, and to sort of be figuring out what you have in the starting rotation down the road. So
So I guess refocusing a little bit though, we're talking keys to success here, and you're saying there's a glaring hole. And
yeah,
is the key to success like everything else will work? So the only key to success is that that one thing also needs to
I
be a
see.
little bit better than we're saying, or what?
Right. Well, I think that definitely needs to be better. I mean, especially when it comes to the playoffs, like the starting pitching, of course, is going to be necessary and important. But I mean, I think, in terms of like, if you're looking for just like general, uh, I guess takeaways, like, or, I guess, generalized keys to success. I mean, I think we're going to have to hopefully be able to accelerate some of the young guys in their development. I think that's a really critical part. Jackson Holiday, in order for us to be dangerous in the postseason. I think guys like Jackson Holiday, potentially Kobe Mayo, Colton Cowser, I think I talked about this a little bit last night for the episode that was released today. But Colton Cowser, there's a lot sort of on his shoulders, I think, in terms of the outfield.
I agree.
So a lot of these young guys, I think, really have to step up in a way that they haven't yet demonstrated. Cowser being the exception to that potentially. But a lot of the young guys, I think, have to step up in a way that, we haven't really seen them do. And I think if the young players are really, really dynamic and are really, really exciting, and this is a young, youthful, energetic team and confident team, sort of reminiscent of the team that lost to the Rangers just a couple years ago with the 101 wins, um, even though the playoff result is not a great comparison, but that was a really young, energetic team. And I think that's sort of what the Orioles are going to have to rely on in order to have success. So I think there is a lot of the overall success of the season riding on the young players on this team.
Yeah, I think obviously, the foundation of this team is young position players. That is who this team is. So, yeah, have to agree. They have to show up. I think what you said about Cowser is a good point. Um, y- you know, this is just like I think kind of crowd think in all the people that I've talked to, and you mentioned it last night, but it seems like Cowser is going to play much like he did the second half of last year. He's going to play every day, either left field or center field, depending on who's on the mound. He will slide over to center for Cedric against lefties, and that is a huge task to put up. I think, Cowser's, I think, going to be in his age 25 season. Um, and obviously, he lived up to it last year. He did everything he was supposed to do. He hit 25 bombs, borderline gold glove defense. He came in second in rookie of the year voting and really should have won it. Luis Heel had like a 5+ ERA in the second half. I'm just saying it again. Um, but yeah, I think Cowser is huge. What you said about Holiday is interesting. I think that to me, Holiday is a little bit of an X factor, but I'm not entirely convinced we need him, right? He like I think even if he's just a league average hitter or even 5% below league average, he'll be a passable second baseman, and the rest of the lineup just rakes in a way that is like unfathomable. And so when I look at, keys to success, quote unquote, I think that for me, I think we know what the rotation is going to be. And even if it's not a super exciting thing, I think we know what it is. And I think, all of those guys, like, I think Tomoyuki Sugano has a pretty high floor, even though we've never seen him pitch in the major leagues. I think Kyle Gibson, we know what he will be. Charlie Morton, we know what he will be. Zach Eflin, I think there's not a whole lot of room for him to fall back. Uh, you know, Cade Povich is a little bit of a variable, but you have Albert Suarez. Like it's a very stable rotation. And I think that projectability then says, okay, well, then the offense just needs to do its job. And if this offense is, hitting 15, 20% better than league average through the first half of the year, this team's going to win a lot of games. Um,
I
and so what,
just to sorry to cut you
you
off,
go,
but I do think it is important to clarify that I do think the second half year of the rotation is very variable,
yeah.
and what the second half of the year rotation is could be
Well, but I think
very
it's
different, and
sure.
it could
It could
be
be
yeah.
it could be very different, but I think it's still like it has the floor that all of these guys, who will be there in the first half have. And so you can project a baseline of performance. Like I think,
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about like heading into the playoffs. Even if even let's say we had this rotation all year long, and we could potentially be a playoff team with
Right.
this rotation because of the depth. Because you could, if a guy's struggling, you pull him and put another 4.5 ERA guy in his place.
Exactly.
That's possible, and that could be a formula to make the playoffs. Trying to win a World Series with this rotation or any combination of these number five starters we have, I mean that's not possible, really, and it's not an acceptable rotation heading into the postseason. So it's very possible we have an excellent rotation heading into the playoffs by playoff standards, and it's also very possible we have a mediocre rotation
Right.
heading into the playoffs. So
I,
that's what I mean about the second half being variable.
sure.
I
Yeah,
think is
yeah,
very
yeah.
possible. Uh-huh.
I think that like if we never see Kyle Bradish or Grayson Rodriguez this year, if we make no trade deadline moves, this team can very easily still win 85, 88 games, somewhere in that range. I think that's more than possible. I agree. Like, you cannot stroll into, the wild card series and run out, currently the first three that Hyde set up are Zach Eflin, Charlie Morton, and Dean Kramer. You just can't do that. Um, so yeah, fully agreed there. At the same time, we also had an ace last year, and it didn't really do anything for us. So, um,
We had the
yeah,
pitching last year, didn't have the hitting,
right. That's exactly
right.
right. So,
In the playoffs,
but
yeah.
yeah, for me, I this team is built around offense. It's built around young position players. That is the key. Is those guys need to do what they did last year, project a little bit more growth, project a rebound from Adley Rutschman. I think that Adley going dark in the second half was as significant as any individual piece on the team. For the Orioles downturn in the second half last year, we were a 500 team the last like 4 months of the season. I think Adley coming back in particular, and he's looked incredible this spring. Notching a couple hits off Paul Skeens, and doing all sorts of stuff. He looks phenomenal, and spring training stats do matter when they support my point. But I think Adley might be the single player if I'm looking to anyone saying that's the guy who could take this team, to new heights. All right, next thing I wanted to get at here, I guess we've kind of acknowledged like the biggest weakness on this team is the starting pitching group. We don't have to keep belaboring that. Give me which position group you think is the biggest strength coming into this season.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the infield. I mean, of course, on opening day it's without Gunnar Henderson, so little asterisk next to it. But in general, I'm really excited about the infield. Um, okay, don't love first base. I love the left half of the infield. In terms of Henderson and Westberg. And it should be clarified. I was sort of putting Westberg when I was talking about the young guys earlier, sort of in that group, even though I didn't say his name specifically. So the left half of the infield, I think, is great. I mean, I know, talked about first base position. And then second base position, sort of like you were saying, I think you're correct that we don't need, per se, Jackson Holiday to do great at second base. Um, I like the platooning that we're going to probably end up having between Mateo and Holiday at second base.
Oh, really?
So yeah,
I,
I think
I,
it.
I
You
I'm
think it's
not
just
totally sure I buy
Holidays to
that.
keep?
I do kind of think that. I think Mateo and Urias are definitely great safety nets, good backup plans. Um, but I think, Jackson is not a like super high power, big platoon splits kind of guy. He is like at this stage in his career more bat to ball than anything, more, like good approach, OBP. That's what he showed his entire time in the minor leagues. So I guess that's the way I lean. And I think that, as long as he's running with it, they'll want to keep that there. But, Mateo and Odias both mashed lefties. I think both like 25, 30% better than league average last year. So I can't argue with it by any means.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's partly about that. I think it's also partly about first of all, the Orioles just love platoons in general. And I think there is going to be something about Holiday's workload that they're going to, try to manage a little bit. Granted, they didn't do that much with Henderson overall. They weren't too concerned about managing his workload. But overall, I do think, especially with the struggles we've seen from Holiday, I do think it's something the Orioles will be concerned and will be thinking about. I'm also not prepared to say that I think Holiday is just going to run away with the position. And I do think if Brandon Hyde does feel more comfortable or thinks it's strategically advantageous to put Mateo in the lineup against lefties, I think he's not going to hesitate to do that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I fully
Yeah.
agree with that. And the the note on the Orioles love splits takes me to me valuing, I think, the outfield position group even more and thinking that th I think that this could be absolutely legendary if everyone stays healthy all year. I just want to reiterate, Ramon Laureano last year against lefties was 39% better than league average. Tyler O'Neill 115% better than league average. And I just want to be clear, I am not saying he had a 115 WRC plus. I'm saying he had a 215 WRC plus. He slugged over 700 against left-handed pitching. Just absolutely destroyed it. Um, and at the same time, we then have three guys who are our normal outfielders, left-handed, and all three of them mash righties. I was actually surprised to see Heston Kjerstad was a little bit better against lefties last year, but better, much better than league average against both lefties and righties. He did have fewer plate appearances against lefties, I should say. Um, but Cedric Mullins obviously has huge, huge, huge splits. Uh, 43 WRC plus against lefties last year, but against righties, he was 20% better than league average. Colton Cowser, 30% better than league average against righties. Um, like if you play these platoons and matchups right, every time an outfielder steps to the plate, you're having a dude who is 20, 30% better than league average facing the pitcher. Every time an outfielder steps to the plate. And that's just not normal. That is sending up an elite hitter every single time, for three times or 130 or lineup, three out of nine guys in the lineup. And that is so, so huge. And I think these guys are going to be all over the 3, 4, 5 spots in the lineup. I think Gunnar and Adley probably take 1 and 2, assuming Gunnar gets healthy, knock on wood. But I think these guys are all over 3, 4, 5. I think, Cedric will probably be like 6, 7, even against a righty, but Cowser, Tyler O'Neill, Heston Kjerstad, and Laureano against a lefty. You have to love what these guys are coming together and looking like. Um, and I know a lot of people want Kjerstad to, get at bats against lefties and get this, unimpeded run in right field. But the fact of the matter is, I think, like like you said, Jess, the Orioles like platoons. The Orioles like putting their guys in the most advantageous position possible. And if you do that, you have a lot of success. The Orioles by WRC plus were the second most effective offensive unit in the game last year, only after the Dodgers. And who could possibly keep up with the Dodgers? Um, yeah, I mean, I am so excited about that outfield group. I think that is where I look at the strength of this team, which is, maybe I'm just being contrarian because obviously we have one of the 5, 10 best players in the world in Gunnar Henderson, and I am ignoring him. But that said, man, I get so amped up about that, and I think that was kind of a masterclass in roster construction right there, saying we have 5 outfielders, let's use those spots.
And just to clarify, you're sort of thinking about the offensive side of the outfield being legendary rather
Yeah.
than the both. Okay.
I mean, I think that the defense will be good.
Solid. Yeah.
We don't have a big right field. Obviously, Anthony Santander was able to cover it for years. So, Kjerstad and Tyler O'Neill, some combination of them in right field will be passable. Ramon Laureano, I think, could probably handle left for us. I'm not really concerned by it. Um, and I think anytime Cedric and Cowser are both out there, I think that's a strength. That's a good looking left side of the outfield. So
Definitely. Makes sense. And just also, neither of us shouted out the bullpen. Just wondering about your thoughts about that. And
yeah,
yeah.
we haven't talked about them much. I feel very good about the bullpen. In fact, um man, I'm gonna have to look it up. You you tell me your thoughts while I look this up. Sorry.
Um, I mean, I think it's in line to be a very good bullpen. I mean, of course, the back end, in particular, potentially could be a strength. You know, to be determined a little bit, with the health of Bautista. But I'm definitely feeling better about the bullpen, coming into this year, than I was last season. So I definitely think it's an improvement from where we were a year ago.
Yeah, I what I wanted to look up was Fangraphs put out some positional power rankings. And for bullpens, they are projecting us to be the number two bullpen in the game only after the Twins. Um, I
And
agree.
they have Duran, so it's
They,
not
they, I mean, they
really a
have Duran, they have
fair,
Griffin Jacks, they have Cole
yeah.
Sands, they have Danny Coulomb again. Man, I'm gonna get fired up over Danny Coulomb again. But yeah, I think that the Orioles we have a lot of firepower in the back end. Assuming Felix was taking it a little bit easy. I mean, even if he wasn't taking it easy, he was touching 99 in spring training. So, you assume that that dude is going to be back throwing 102, 103 at some point. Sir Anthony Dominguez has one of the best fastballs in all of baseball. The Orioles made some adjustments to lower the release point, get a little bit more vertical ride on it, and it's just straight up one of the best fastballs in the game. I think Keegan Aiken's dominant. Yennier Cano, still just running 60% ground ball rates and striking out a little bit better than league average. You have to feel really good about it. I think that the pen is going to be a strength. I think that Felix, us protecting him and having a thin starting rotation means that we could get in a dangerous spot with the bullpen pretty quickly. I think you're going to see the Orioles playing the roster, playing options a little bit. I think Colin Selby will be up and down maybe. Uh, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting, but I think there's a chance for the bullpen to get worn down very quickly, particularly if you have a guy in Felix who can throw one day and cannot throw the next.
And if your starting pitchers are going 4 or 5 innings
Right,
each
right,
outing.
exactly.
So, I mean, and yeah, I mean, when thinking about the back end, it's we got 4 guys, potentially who are capable of being closers, which is such a luxury. And you
It
didn't
is.
even mention Soto,
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah.
which, he's hit or miss, but
Well, I've been
he could
banging
be
the drum.
good.
I've been banging
Yeah.
the drum for Soto a little bit this year because Soto, in his last 20 appearances with us, only walked three guys. He I think the Orioles. I talked about this on an episode dedicated specifically to him, but the Orioles kind of shrunk his pitch mix. Had him going as more of a two pitch guy where the Phillies were working like a sinker, a four seam, a sweeper, and the normal hard gyro slider that he throws. And the Orioles kind of simplified that, and he was mostly sinker and gyro. And I think that helped him a little bit. He's not screwing around as much with let me get on this side of the ball, let me get over here. It's just I'm just gonna throw it. And he throws 97, 98 miles an hour. He's got the stuff to live in the heart of the plate, basically. Um, so I think that approach can sustain. I think if he carries that in, absolutely, I think he's going to be vital to this pen. I think he already in my mind is leapfrogged Cianel Perez as somebody that I want in the game. Um, and Perez didn't even give up a home run last year. One of the cooler stats.
And he
Um,
caught a lot of them,
that's true. He caught
Yeah.
a lot of them in his hat. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, love that. I I should plug this. One time on Twitter back in the day, uh, somebody, or I just tweeted out, I was like, CNL Perez has got to catch that ball. He like dropped a home run in his hat. And somebody was like, ah, come on, give him a break. And CNL himself responded and said, no, he's right. No excuses. Uh, CNL will always live in my heart as the only player that I've actually talked to on Twitter. But um, all right, next question we got here. We'll keep this pretty short and then we'll get into prediction season. Is Brandon Hyde on the hot seat this year? Tyler did a little bit of an episode. I shouldn't say a little bit of an episode. He did a whole episode on this topic. Um, but you and I were not there, Jesse. And it's our time to shine. Tyler's taking care of children or whatever. We'll let him do that. You tell me, is Brandon Hyde on the hot seat? And I guess how badly does this season need to go for him to get fired? What's the bar he has to reach?
Well, to be fair, what I'll say is I really do think it's a bit of an excuse on Tyler's part to, say he's got to be with his children and couldn't
Yeah,
make the episode. I mean, such a
frankly,
flimsy sort of excuse. It's kind of like saying I have a little bit of a headache or, I have to go take a 10-minute shower. It kind of
yeah.
feels like that a little bit. But
Frankly, we're disappointed and we expect more out of
yeah,
Tyler, but
definitely. Right.
we'll let it go this time.
Um, yeah, I'm surprised his kids don't have amazing analysis on the Orioles yet. I mean, they should have by the age of 4 like already been members of the podcast,
I tell you what,
So,
Jess, when I have a
yeah.
child, the first thing they're going to learn is how to interface with the Fangraphs website. Like
Perfect.
they're
Yeah.
going to be plugged in all the time. Baseball
Sounds
Savant,
good.
not Baseball Savant first, then
Yeah.
Fangraphs. Yeah,
They're gonna be like one of the 7-year-old like chess prodigies, but
that's
they're gonna
right.
be like a podcast Orioles podcast prodigy,
There's that little dude,
Uh,
Antonio Oro from Argentina, I
right.
think,
Yeah,
who's an
exactly.
11-year-old, or
Yeah.
Faustino Oro, something like that.
Yeah, Faustino. Yeah,
11-year-old grandmaster taking on the world. Yeah, that's gonna be my
definitely.
kid.
Yep. Just for this podcast
Yeah,
though.
for this
Yeah.
podcast. That's right.
Um yeah, back to the question. Brandon Hyde, yeah, I mean I sort of if I'm remembering correctly, I think I more or less agreed with Tyler's um perspective. I don't think that Brandon Hyde really has a feasible chance of getting fired before the season, but I will say that I do think that I think potentially the Orioles need a playoff advancement and a series win in the playoffs in order for him not to get fired. And I think at a very, very, very bare minimum, they need at least a win. And if he doesn't get the Orioles a win, in the postseason or fails to make the postseason, I do think we are going to see a change. And I think he's sort of in a situation where the expectations sort of like should be known. If they lose in the ALCS, I think he's safe, right? But with that said, I do think that we can't sort of keep doing the same thing every year and crashing out in the wild card round or the divisional round immediately. So the divisional round because we had the bye. We can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So I do think there is, in particular, playoff pressure on him for this upcoming year. I think you saw a little bit as we talked about. I think Tyler talked about. I think the clubhouse changes at the end of the season last year were a little bit of a warning shot to to Hyde, just sort of being like, okay, we're going to try to give you different support around you. They sort of did almost everything except firing the manager himself. So I think that was a little bit of a precursor, like, hey, uh, yeah, we're trying to help you out here, but now you got to deliver. So, um, I guess the good thing for him is that I think it's very sort of reasonable what he sort of has to do. I think he knows what he has to do in order to be back in 2026, and it's up to him and kind of the players too, to actually do it. So,
Yeah. I will acknowledge the Orioles have been a little bit cagey about Hyde's contract status. So that is kind of an interesting factor here. Um, but largely, I think I agree with you. I think that, yeah, I mean, 3 years in a row, 3 years in a row, getting to the playoffs and failing to win a single game would, I mean, that would hit like a bag of bricks. That would be just the worst feeling. And you would then be halfway through Adley Rutschman's team control. He joined us in 22. Um, Yeah, I'm sorry. We're halfway through it now. Should have been his first year of ARB. Yeah. So you're halfway through Adley Rutschman's team control. You would be two-thirds of the way. You know, Gunnar came up at the end of 22, so he would be 23, 24, 25. So he would also um, be halfway through his time. It's like, and then these guys are going to start getting more expensive. Arbitration raises for elite players get expensive. Juan Soto was making $30 million. I think Lindor like broke the record back in the day. He was up at 27 or something like that. It, these guys will get expensive, and your ability to operate in free agency will get worse and worse. You're going to start losing, that payroll space. So I have to think that we yeah, like we have to be feeling some pressure. And this goes back to what you alluded to earlier with, Elias always plays it calm, cool, and collected, even in his actions, not just in press conferences and stuff where none of that matters, but even in his actions, he is like, I'm gonna do what I can to supplement this team a little bit this year, and we'll see how it goes, Um, yeah, so I agree. I think Hyde's on the hot seat. I think that yeah, I gave you this ridiculous question that means nothing about some bar that he had to hit to stay on the team. But I do think that, yeah, winning a playoff series is probably likely. I think another crash out early on in the playoffs leaves this team in a very difficult spot, and you need to bring somebody new in to probably re-energize everyone and probably, like sustain kind of the momentum that you have built through building this big core of phenomenal young players. So,
right. Yeah,
okay.
and I
Yeah.
think the provided they make the playoffs, I think the wins and losses for the year don't really matter. And I do want to reiterate, I don't think they will make a change in the middle of the season.
Yeah. I
Like
agree
I
there.
don't think that's really possible either. So,
Yeah. No, I think there's pretty much no world where that happens. I think the Orioles would need to be exceedingly bad. And I just don't think that'll come to pass because
yeah.
we're really good. Um, okay. Well, I don't know. Do you have anything else that you would like to say before we move on to some predictions to wrap this podcast up?
Nope.
Okay. I need to open up the phone, see what Tyler said.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think when we answer these, we should state Tyler's prior to ours.
Okay. And then do we get to do any rebuttal against Tyler
Without
since he's
without
not
him
here to
here to
defend
defend
himself?
himself. Sure. I don't know how I'm trying to remember his answers. I'm not sure how much rebuttal I'll have,
I,
but yeah.
I got him here. So,
Okay.
okay. So let's start off. Official 2025 prediction for the Baltimore Orioles record this season. Tyler says 93 and 69. Nice. What do you think?
I think 91 and 71.
Mm, I,
The Orioles are trending down for the
yeah,
past, third season. We're continuing the trend
well, we won 91
downwards.
last year. We won exactly 91 last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you're saying stay constant. I personally, I, you know, I talk up that I think Elias does a great job, and I talk up that I think this offseason was solid. I I say a lot. I am actually going to be the low man here. I think the Orioles are going to win 89 games and lose 73.
Wow.
I think that there are going to be bumps in the rotation. I think that like even Andrew Kittredge going down from the bullpen, I think that, if you just have a bad day where you are left with Brian Baker, coming out of the pen and passing it to CNL Perez, and then it's like, hopefully we'll get to Gregory Soto in the ninth. That's not a recipe. I think that's going to be rough. I think, some days will pass to Albert Suarez in the pen just because he needs to keep getting work, even though he's not starting. And he was not good in the pen last year. I think that there is a world where the pitching is just unable to support the level of production that the offense will give. And I think that's going to knock us down. So I'm going 89 wins. Um, that said, how far will the Orioles get in the playoffs in whatever? Tyler
S-
says,
So
oh, go ahead.
backing
Sure, sure,
up,
sure.
sorry. So out of curiosity, do you think it will sort of resemble last year where the Orioles started better and then sort of crashed at the end? Do you have any sense of that? Do you think it'll be we start badly and then we're playing catch up the rest of the season, or you think it's going to be kind of constant, or yeah.
I think I'll need to answer the next question, which is how far do the Orioles get this year? And I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna give Tyler's first. He thinks we're
Hmm.
gonna win the AL East with those 93 wins and lose in the ALCS. I will say, kind of a moderate 93 win total for winning a division, but at the same time, because it is going to be such a dogfight, there are going to be a number of good teams, maybe five, in the division this year. I will say I don't fully believe five, but I think the Blue Jays are bad. I think the Yankees are going to get exposed. But that said, should be, five competitive teams at the very least. So Tyler says win the AL East with 93 games, and then we're going to lose in the ALCS. Now, since you asked me a question, I can go ahead next. I personally think that we are going to have kind of a rough stretch at the beginning of the year. Gunner is out. Uh, I think Jackson Holiday might have some adjustments to make. I think that like the platoon role for Cedric Mullins might be he like largely did it at the end of last year, so I don't want to say he's going to be unprofessional about it or anything like that, but I think there will be a lot of people kind of settling into roles. I think that once Felix is let loose after a couple months, I think that once Grayson comes back, I think that once hopefully Kyle Bradish comes back in August, I think this team absolutely roars into the playoffs. I think like there's a good chance I think at the All-Star break we are not even in playoff position, and I think we roar into the playoffs, and I'll say what do I say? What do I say? What do I say? Wild card and screw it, losing the World Series to the Dodgers because they win everything. That's what I got.
Yeah. Yeah, and to your point, hopefully Bradish will be back within the century. So,
Within the century.
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's the
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah, right. It'll be a problem if he's not, so
Uh-huh.
um yeah, so I actually agree with you. Normally the Orioles have gotten off to good starts over the past couple years, and I think that's where this year is going to be different. I think the Orioles, I agree, are going to get stronger as the season goes on. So I'm with you there. I do think that uh, I do feel like we're going to crash out in the playoffs again, though.
Oh my
In the
God.
first round, yeah, I think we're gonna make it as a wild card team, but I do think that we are going to exit early in the playoffs.
Jesse,
I
Jesse,
think
hold on, hold on. Who hurt you such that you are like less than 16 hours from opening day and you do not have hope of winning a playoff game right now?
I am an Orioles fan.
What
Now, I
what
I think
happened to you, man?
I think it's I know. I think it's possible that the Orioles win a playoff game. I just don't think we'll win the series, I guess is sort of how I'm thinking about it.
It's disappointing.
Yeah. So I do think, sort of how the Orioles haven't done anything to fix really the problem, I guess, that we saw last year. Now, granted, in the playoffs, it was like the hitting, and there's not a ton you can do to, I guess, fix that. Arguably, maybe you would say, well, they got these platoon matchups in the outfield,
Chess,
and
I
no,
haven't.
I, sorry, I'm not like dismissing it. I'm just
No, no,
saying
no. I
that
just go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. Yeah, I'm just saying that I don't think the Orioles have done anything significantly to change it. The Orioles got Corbin Burns last year, sort of to address, to get an ace to bring us ready into the playoffs. That was at least like an attempt, I saw for the Orioles to sort of like address a bit of the problem. And I feel like we haven't really done that. Now there is time to do that at the trade deadline. But I'm just not confident that things are going to go differently this year than how they have, I guess.
So I have a problem with this whole thing because you yourself said the Orioles didn't do anything to fix the problem, and then you said, well, the problem wasn't pitching last year. And like, you could say the problem was pitching back in 2023 when we lost to the Rangers.
Hmm.
I would kind of agree, but at the same time, like,
It wasn't really a lack of talent. It was just
right,
like Grayson
Grayson
Rodriguez
Rodriguez,
didn't do well, and
right. He
Bradish
did
like
not go an
wasn't
inning and two.
stellar.
Grayson didn't go an inning and two-thirds in any start the entire season, I bet. So
Right,
like,
right, right. Yeah,
right. So the question then becomes to me,
yeah.
like, what are you supposed to do? Are you supposed to overreact to like Grayson Rodriguez sucking all of a sudden and say like, God, we need to fix the rotation? I don't think that's correct.
No,
Or do you look
no.
at like Gunnar Henderson, oh, he didn't put the team on his back last year. We need a new superstar. Like I fundamentally reject that you are supposed to make any decisions based on how the playoffs went.
A
Like,
3-game series.
right.
Yeah.
Believe me, I want to go all in. I wanted to sign Max Fried, Corbin Burns, and Jack Flaherty to headline the rotation. And then I wanted to go ahead and I wanted to put Juan Soto in right field to replace Anthony Santander. I wanted all of it, right? But fundamentally, like, if I were actually responsible for building the team, I would look at this and I would say, all
That's
right,
not what you would have done.
right.
Right.
I would have Kyle Bradish and Grayson Rodriguez 1-2 in a playoff series, and Zach Eflin 3. And I
Hmm.
think I'd be very, very happy with that. I would have Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Colton Cowser, Tyler O'Neill, all these guys coming through in the lineup. Like, this is a playoff team as it is currently constructed. And like, even if the rotation is weak, right, the bats are so good that, you know,
Right.
like this is what Texas did, right? Jordan Montgomery was fine. He was good in the regular season. He was great in the playoffs. Nathan Eovaldi was fine. He was great in the playoffs. Like people can just catch fire for no reason whatsoever.
Right.
Um,
A-
and then you
And
just slug, Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia. Like they just beat the ball
and
their way to a World Series. Right.
the power was a big strength of the Orioles last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and granted, so first of all, just to clarify, my comment wasn't specifically about the rotation, like fixing the problem. It wasn't about the rotation, per se. It was more
I'm
just
I'm rejecting the whole premise of fixing
I
a
know, I
problem
know,
though. Yeah.
I know. Well, yeah. Okay. I
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a problem.
Well, what would the
I
problem
mean,
be? Like
well,
what's the problem you would fix?
it's a little unclear how to fix it. I think if the Orioles had done it, granted, like they got new coaching and stuff like that, they have, it's going to be a different set of people in the dugout. But I Yeah, I don't exactly have an answer to what I would have done, but this feels coming into the season just very much like last year felt, except less exciting without Corbin Burns. And um, I guess I don't know what attempts are being made to sort of like correct the playoff issues that they've had. Brandon Hyde being replaced as manager last year. Now, I'm not saying that that would be the right decision, but I am saying that potentially I would feel different about the Orioles and their potential playoff chances coming into this year. I do think it is potentially fair to say that there was something, especially last year, about the preparation of this team heading into the playoffs. That is a big point of critique, I think, um, from a managerial perspective, from an offensive approach perspective. Um, I mean, we've talked about that on the show before. Tyler's gone into episodes about it. I've talked about it. Um, so, uh, yeah, uh, I don't know. I
Okay.
have concerns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I, I understand sort of where you're coming from because I'm not providing clear, concrete, well, they could have done X, Y, and Z necessarily, and I would feel better about the situation. And perhaps what I'm thinking about is sort of out there and sort of intangible, I guess. But at the same time, I feel it.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people feel it, and I think that the biggest thing to me is the fact that it is intangible. Nobody knows like what could actually be done about it. And so it's not like an actionable item. And I think like just saying fix the problem or there's a playoff problem, like you come into the playoffs with a different cast of characters every single year. You come into the playoffs with a whole new team and it's, a 3-game series. Like but bummer. Like I'm sad that it happened. My dream is for the Orioles to win a playoff game one day, but I just can't get behind there being like the playoffs telling you anything about a team, really.
I
I,
get it,
I
and
just don't.
I know that's your sort of philosophy that you don't put much stock into the outcomes of the playoffs and it's random, and I do think there's a lot to that. With that said, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's in not actionable items. I mean, I think if there was a different manager, that would be actionable. Not saying that it is definitively the right move. I can't really, I don't know enough to say. But if the Orioles had gotten a couple veterans with playoff experience or something like that, maybe that's not something you put a lot of weight in, but that would be something that I would feel a little bit more comfortable with if the Orioles had a Tommy Pham like figure or something along these
You
lines.
think Kyle Gibson's
I
not
don't
going to
know.
be the not going to be the right dad for
Well,
this team?
I think about it. Yeah, no, I don't, not sure how sarcastic that is, but I
No,
think
I
about
mean
it
it very
more.
seriously. I thought
I
Kyle
mean,
Gibson was great.
I mean it
Yeah.
more for position players,
Okay.
than pitchers. But
Cool. All right. Uh, I think we talked about that too much, so I'm going to push us along here. So season result, just a recap. Tyler thinks we win the AL East. I think we are a wild card, or Tyler thinks we win the AL East, losing the ALCS. I think we're a wild card that gets to the World Series. And recap yours one more time. You just think we crash out. Is it in the wild
I
card
think
or the
we're
division
yeah.
series?
No, I think we enter as a wild card team. So the wild
Okay.
card. Yeah,
It's very disappointing. Wow. Okay.
yeah.
Well, hopefully some better news. Let's talk about the Orioles. Let's talk about the Orioles Rookie of the Year. Tyler says he thinks this is, quote, a lame workaround, but the only answer that seems likely. He goes with Tomoyuki Sugano. You have any thoughts?
I'm sorry. This is rookie of the year. You said
Rookie of the Year.
no.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't think it's gonna be Mayo. Um,
I
yeah,
don't know what Kobe Mayo would do on this team right now, so
yeah,
I'm
right.
glad he's getting some reps
What
in.
role? Yeah,
Right.
triple A.
He could
Yeah,
be our
what role?
third first baseman,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
What role does he have? Although I know
Right.
that you feel like, I know you've talked about how you feel like him getting some work at AAA is really helping him to learn more about baseball and, become the full, better version of
I'm not sure I'd go
himself,
that
So,
far, but
well, I
it at
thought
least
your argument was basically that him playing at AAA is completely pointless and it's a waste of his time.
yeah, no,
And
it simultaneously is, and
mhm.
it's better for him to be swinging a bat than sitting on the Orioles bench. Like I think both of those things are true, so I agree with him being a AAA, and he can get called up once we trade one or both of the Ryans at the deadline. That's my hope for this year.
Hmm. It's
So
well, whatever. I could theoretically interrogate that.
I,
It's better for him to not be on the
I,
to be on the bench.
another
Yeah,
podcast, Jesse.
okay. Yeah,
Another
yeah,
podcast.
okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Tyler says Tomoyuki Sagano. Jesse says Tomoyuki Sagano. I also say Tomoyuki Sagano. I don't think there's anyone even close. We have stuffed Cade Povich lost rookie eligibility last year. We have stuffed Brandon Young and Chase McDermott so far down the depth chart by adding these 48-year-old men into the rotation. Um, Jackson Holiday is not a rookie. I don't see a rookie besides Sugano having any kind of like even impactful playing time this year, um, which is kind of fascinating. It seems like we've been churning out a superstar rookie every single year for the last 5 years. But that said, it's kind of nice to just like have a stable team, say these are our guys, and we're going to war. Um, but Sugano, I think he's fascinating. I think it's really, really cool. Like I feel better that we have seen like 93, 94 miles an hour in spring training, and it's not just the 89 to 91 that was advertised. Um, but he's got so many different pitches. He clearly is a command artist. He clearly likes he clearly likes the art of pitching, which is this super nebulous thing. But the Orioles talked to him, and he said, oh, I don't go for these high fastballs. I don't do this, this, this because I think I can manipulate umpires in Japan. I think the umpires in Japan give me this specific advantage, and I can go off the plate a little bit when I do this. And apparently, the Orioles were blown away by how cerebral he was, and I love players who think. Um, and so I fully, fully support this. I think Sagano is going to be cool. I think that like I think there's a good argument he should never throw a four seam fastball this year because it's just not going to work. But at the same time, like I think he could be one of many guys in the Orioles rotation who should not be throwing four seam fastballs this year. Pretty much everyone should be throwing a fastball that moves because nobody has good fastballs. Um, I'm kind of fascinated by that aspect in this new modern era. I talked about that before, but I like Sugano. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any extra thoughts you want to share on him?
No.
Okay. All right, that was easy. Let's go Cy Young, the Orioles Cy Young, to be clear. Um, Tyler says that Cy Young will be Eflin by default, which is kind of disappointing. Felix Bautista is runner up. Just worried he won't be as dominant, Tyler says. Any thoughts?
I have to agree. Unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, the pitifulness of the Orioles rotation is making this somewhat easy to answer, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of, the starting pitcher has the edge because they're throwing many more innings, double the innings perhaps, as the closer. So, uh, because of that, that makes it hard for Bautista to compete, even though Bautista might have half the ERA that Eflin has at the end of the year. So, yeah, it's got to be Eflin. If it's not going to be a reliever, then you got to look at the rotation, and there is nobody that is somewhat competitive with Eflin, who is going to be pitching enough innings to compete for this title. So
Okay, we can give Zach Eflin a little bit of credit. He was very good for
he's good.
us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, I don't think
I
I
know,
didn't
but
mean it disparaging. I just
right.
meant like
You just
no,
kept saying that
the
like
guys who might compete with them, like Bradish and Rodriguez, they're not going to throw enough innings to
I
be able to do
I
that.
just wanted to make clear that Zach Eflin will deserve the award of his own merit beyond just
I
everyone else
see.
not
I
being
see.
worth it. You know, like,
I mean,
come
he's
on.
good. He's good.
I think he
He
was like fourth or
probably
fifth in Cy Young voting like
he's
2 years
very
ago.
good. No, he's very good. Don't get me
And that's
wrong. I'm
actual
not.
Cy Young voting, not Orioles Cy Young voting like we're talking
Yeah,
about now.
right. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Um,
I also have Eflin. I think
mm,
for all the reasons you said, I do agree. I think he is like I everything I said about Tomoyuki Sugano and how he's like artful and appreciates the science behind pitching. I think Eflin is very much just as cerebral. I think the Orioles made some very, very legitimate adjustments with him, kind of scrapping the four seam in different situations. They kind of turned him into two different pitchers, depending on whether he was facing lefties and righties. They clearly like had this plan for him, and I think he executed it to a T. Um, I think Eflin carries that through this year. Very excited about him. He's got a wide arsenal, pinpoint command. Um, Super cool. So I'm gonna go on to most valuable Oriole, and what I'm kind of realizing here is that we like are running through these at the end, and the frustrating part of it is I think we're gonna have a clean sweep if we agree on all three Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, and most valuable Oriole. I think we're
yeah.
going to agree on every single one. That's kind of boring. So maybe we should have done the record last. But Tyler thinks that the most valuable Oriole will be, pausing for dramatic effect,
Shocking.
Gunnar Henderson. That's right. Tyler says, quote, he gets healthy soon. Oh, there's more to that quote. Pardon me. Tyler says, quote, he gets healthy soon enough to still be the best player on the team, but less productive overall. So no MVP talk this year. That's kind of disappointing. I think there's a chance Gunnar is still very much in the MVP conversation this year. If he stays healthy the rest of the year, he needs to stay on for a minimum of 7 days due to this 10-day IL assignment. Um, so, they said he had been doing all baseball activities. If he's back in a week, I'm not sure I would go as far to say that he won't be in the broader MVP conversation, but yeah, certainly. I mean, this guy is the best player on the team. He's one of the best players in the world. I think the only person who could give him a run for his money is Adley Rutschman if Adley's defense, comes back to where we think it could be. If his bat comes back to where it was in 2022 in the first half of or I'm sorry, 2023 in the first half of last year. Um, Adley could give him a run for his money, but I still don't think it's enough. I'm going Gunner.
And I'm just curious. I absolutely think it's Gunner. Cowser, you don't think potentially is possible?
Cowser's
I mean,
possible. Yeah, I mean,
could
if
could you see
Cowser,
a situation where he hits 32 home runs,
I could see that.
33
Yeah,
home
if he
runs,
cuts down
and
on strikeouts a
then
little bit, I think Cowser could be a problem. Yeah, I think that's fair. I just, Gunner was 2 years younger and hit 37 or whatever last year. So
it would have to take a, a lot of injury on Henderson's part
yeah,
to potentially make that happen. I mean, Westberg potentially like if we are dreaming,
yeah,
then I could see a situation maybe I could convince myself, but
clearly
it'd
searching
be
for
a lot
something.
would have to happen. Yeah, a lot would have to happen.
Yeah. So
Um,
we're all on Gunner there. It is a clean sweep for Tomoyuki Sugano for Rookie of the Year, Zach Eflin for the Orioles Cy Young, and Gunnar Henderson for Most Valuable Oriole. The last thing we have today is one bold prediction for this upcoming season. Tyler's bold prediction is, quote, a big trade for a pitcher at the deadline. His hope is Alcantara, which could be Mayo goes to Miami. So I'm a little disappointed with Tyler here, and I hope he hears this.
yeah,
I'm talking to you, Tyler. bold is not we're gonna go get a pitcher at the deadline, right? And big, he says hope is Alcantara. A prediction you need to lay it on the line, and you say the Orioles are gonna do Sandy Alcantara for Kobe Mayo, Jed Fabian, and Alex Pham. You need to like get uber specific and nail down exactly what you think is going to happen. Um, so Tyler gets a a demerit. Can we say that? A demerit for that one.
He's
Um,
racked up a few tonight.
yeah, right. Just not being here.
Right.
All right, Jess, give me your bold prediction for this year.
My bold prediction is going to be a negative one.
Oof.
Uh,
Bro, tell me
yeah,
something good.
I'm bringing all the negativity.
Give me some.
Uh,
Okay. You have to do a
Something good.
mini positive prediction after this. I'm laying down the
Okay,
law.
after you go, I will.
Okay.
So my negative prediction is that, but I think it is a bold one. So I think I get points for the boldness category here. But I'm gonna say Jackson Holiday gets sent to AAA.
Mm, that is kind of bold.
Yeah. Now,
Interesting.
just to just to sort of explain that, I could see a situation where he's not hitting, and I think that he's in a different situation than other players because of the expectations. He's sort of in the situation where he can be one of the best active players on the team. He could be more productive than Mateo or Urias at second base and still get demoted. And whoever replaces him, he
Mm.
could be more productive than that person or be a better player. But the Orioles decide that for his individual growth and development, he's getting beaten up and he needs to take a breather down in AAA.
I,
So
I
that's my
like
bold prediction.
I started to agree with you there, but you took a turn at the last second. What I thought you were going to say is that just because the dude has options and can go to AAA, is that like when Mateo comes back and Gunnar Henderson is healthy and we have literally no roster spots left,
Roster flexibility thing.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
you could punt him to AAA. It's like I mean, really, your only options would be him or Heston Kjerstad, unless
Well,
we
that
get
is
somebody off the roster.
contributing. That is a factor that's
No,
contributing
you
to
can't
the
claim that now.
analysis here. Yeah.
I just said that. You can't claim
That
that.
wasn't the focal point of my argument, okay? But it's a factor that was contributing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so I've given a couple bold predictions throughout the offseason. I think both of them are solid, and I will regurgitate them here. For one, I think that Tyler O'Neill hits more home runs than Anthony Santander this year. Put that very bluntly, leave it out there. I think that he
That's bold.
straight up has more power. It is only a question of whether he plays enough games. And if we can find a magical way to keep him healthy, he's gonna do it. And I don't believe Santander is like, I say truly a like 44 home run guy, but he had never shown that kind of pop before. I don't think he has another 40 home run season. Um,
I'm sorry, just to clarify, you're saying you think O'Neill will hit 44 home runs, or
no,
you're
no, no,
thinking
no, no,
he'll have
no,
more
sorry.
home runs than Anthony Santander will put
This
up
year.
this year?
This year,
Oh,
correct. Yeah.
oh, okay. That
You roll
ruins
your
the
eyes like that's
prediction
not
a
that
little bit.
bold.
That it's a little less bold. Okay,
Okay, I mean
I thought you were saying he was going to hit 44, but
okay,
I'm with you. Okay, it's still cool. Yeah, yeah.
there was a 13 home run difference between them last year, for
Right,
what it's
right.
worth. So it
Hmm.
wasn't insignificant. Um,
Though it is fair to say that the 3 years prior than that, like Santander was around 31, 28, 27, somewhere in the 27 to 31 range.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
last year for him was an outlier. So you're basically I,
I'm saying
I'm
he
not hating on the
regresses.
prediction.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
how about
But
I take this a step further? So Tyler O'Neill over the last couple years has hit 34, 14, and 9, and then 31 last year. So Why don't I take it
Yeah,
a step further
right.
and say Tyler O'Neill sets a new career high in home runs, 35 or more home runs, and that total is more than whatever Anthony Santander hits. Does that make you happy?
I mean, if you said he was going to hit 50 home runs, I might consider that a bold prediction, but this is a very
Okay.
mediocre bold prediction.
I'm just
I'm
gonna say
joking. I'm
Tyler O'Neill.
joking.
Yeah, sure. I'll say
Yeah.
40 just to make Jesse happy.
Don't, no. Go back
None
to
of
your
this means
original thing.
anything anyways. So,
Well, if the 40 doesn't happen, then if he hits 38, you can't
yeah,
take credit for
I'd
it,
be
So
upset.
I
Yeah.
I would go back to your
Okay.
original 30 or
Okay.
whatever. But yeah.
Tyler says Sandy Alcantara for Kobe Mayo, Jed Fabian, and Alex Pham. I added those last couple notes. Jesse says Jackson Holliday gets optioned. I'm throwing out Tyler O'Neill sets a new personal record for home runs, and it is more than Anthony Santander hits. The other one that I threw out this year, and this is very niche, but I enjoyed it. I think that the Orioles will have two of the top three starting pitchers this year, qualified starting pitchers, in walk rate. I think Zach Eflin and Tomoyuki Sugano will be two of the top three. And I think George Kirby will be there too. I don't know how those three, like will shape out. I guess to make it bold, I have to say, I was going to say one and two, but you just told me I don't have to go that bold. Okay. Two out of the top three for walk rate. We're going to leave it at that. Two out of the top three. Um, Tomoyuki Sugano has walked guys this spring, and so I have lost confidence in this prediction. But I'm going to hold to it. He walked 1.7% of guys last year, if I'm remembering that number right. I don't have it in front of me, but under 2% of the batters he faced in Japan last year, which is a ridiculous number. And Zach Eflin is like pretty consistently top five in the bigs. So I'm thinking we have two of the top three in the bigs for walk rate. Um, I don't know what you got.
Oh, my
Your
minor bold
yeah, mini,
prediction.
but positive. It's got to be positive. I'm only giving goods.
Okay.
I'm like having to carry
I'm
all of.
gonna okay,
Stop,
I'll
stop,
say
stop. I'm having to carry all of the positivity in this in this podcast right now. Everyone would walk away from this thing crying if you were doing it alone. That's not fun.
sorry.
They're going to be listening to
Uh
this.
Here we
Uh,
go. Ready? Colton Cowser hits 33 home runs. That's my bold prediction.
Okay, is that 33 or above or exactly 33?
33. 33 exactly.
Okay, I love it.
Yeah.
Ah, that would be positive. I'm a fan of
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He could do it.
Uh yeah.
I will say, feel free to deny this offer. I did sort of realize we really should have predicted all stars. I don't know if you want
Mm.
to do that quickly before we go.
It sounds like you've thought about this a little bit, so you go ahead and I
I
will.
I haven't mm, I haven't really.
Mm,
Um
mm.
okay, here we go. I'll say Yenyer Cano,
Ooh.
Sir Anthony Dominguez. I don't know, two from the bullpen. It's tough.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Uh yeah. Um
And Dominguez, who's given up like 18 runs this spring.
yeah. Uh and then we'll go, yeah, I guess Gunnar Henderson. Okay, I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna
Oh
say
my God.
Henderson. Here we go. Henderson, Cano. Hmm. Henderson and Cano. I think Bautista, there
Isn't
might
getting
be a
used
cur
enough.
yeah.
Okay. I will go. So, for what it's worth, they don't all have to be starters. I'm going Rutschman, Henderson, Westberg. Do I push it? Um, Rutschman, Henderson, Westberg. And then, yeah, I'm gonna say Tyler O'Neill too. I have to stand by him. I think the power is just gonna go crazy. And then I'm saying absolutely nobody from the bullpen. And starting rotation, it's like, would Zach Eflin do it? And I don't think Zach Eflin's gonna do it. So final answer: Colton Cowser, Adley Rutschman, Jordan Westberg, Tyler O'Neill, Gunnar Henderson. I think we have five. And I feel
Wow,
pretty good about that. Yeah.
that's a lot. I mean, that'd be great.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
three of them were there last year.
yeah, now that I'm thinking just a tiny bit about it, I really do think it's kind of dumb. I'm not saying Adley Rutschman, but
I agree.
yeah,
Because it
I
is a
think
popularity
I'm
contest.
editing it. I think he is going. I'm changing it. Yeah. And I don't think there are a lot of people outside of Baltimore that know how bad he was offensively the second half. So
Hmm,
I
I think
don't
they
think.
do. I mean, national media knows it's been a storyline.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I don't think it'll hurt him,
yeah. All
for
right.
the All-Star voting.
I agree with that.
All right.
Is there anything, Jesse?
No. We've talked so
I didn't even
much.
finish the question, dude.
Oh, sorry. I thought go ahead.
I mean, you answered the question I was going to ask, but you didn't let me finish it.
Is there anything else?
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to say?
No.
Okay. Well,
I was gonna say we weren't in mid-season four, but I'm already ahead of you. We have the brother
dude,
connection.
I,
I know what you're gonna say before you say it.
I,
I know the facial expressions, the tone. I was just a little impulsive in my response.
I
Uh,
personally think this was a great podcast. I think we had a lot of fun.
Good.
I
I
think we
I
said some good
agree.
stuff.
I
Yeah.
agree.
All right.
We would
So
have talked for 4 hours if Tyler was here, but
that's true.
so it
And
was.
we might
Yeah,
keep going after we stop recording. So,
yeah, right.
okay. Yeah, let's wrap it up. I think we have predicted just about everything we possibly could. Um, I want to thank everyone for listening. This has been a delight. It's good to hang out with you, Jess. And yeah, thanks again, everyone, for making it this far. If you have, this has been the Warehouse Podcast. Obviously, if you would be so inclined, please do follow us on Blue Sky at the Warehouse Pod. You can email us, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. And for the podcast or podcast video, I always wave to YouTube. Um, please do subscribe to the channel, either on your preferred podcasting platform or YouTube. Please do rate us. Please do leave comments on videos, likes, hearts. We appreciate all of us. It helps us grow and helps us reach more awesome Orioles listeners like yourselves, to keep this conversation going. So, uh, thank you as always. I think we're both looking forward to a really strong 2025 season here. Uh, yeah, I don't know. Anything you want to say, Jess?
Nope, that's it.
All right.
Yeah, thank you all for listening.
Well, this has been the Warehouse Podcast. Uh, we'll talk to you soon. Tyler will be out with an Orioles opening day recap episode, I should say. And he should get that up to you on Friday morning. And that's all I got. My name's Eli,
I'm Jesse.
and let's go O's.